Once upon a time, the biggest threat to Chinese national security wasn't America, any of the European powers, nor even Japan or Korea. It was instead Soviet Russia. Back then, the Soviet Union was the undisputed heavyweight of the Asian continent. It had a massive military, thousands of nuclear weapons, and influence all across the planet. And who sat right on its borders? The People's Republic of China. Times, though, have of course changed. Modern Russia no longer carries the same influence and weight that the former USSR once did. With Russia's military busy in Ukraine and its economy placed under heavy sanctions, its friend is now a much more powerful China. These two nations may be close, they're not exactly allies. In essence, the relationship isn't exactly even. Economically, Russia has become quite reliant on China. According to the OEC, the Chinese market makes up a significant portion of Russian exports. Moreover, over half of all Russian imports come from China. This obviously matters for Russian politics. See, the country has seemingly staked quite a lot on the Ukraine war, and reports indicate that the country needs backing. According to a report by Bloomberg, Russia imports over 90% of sanctioned technology from China. Reporting by The Economist corroborates this and says that Chinese microelectronics and semiconductors are very, very important for Russia's missile and drone capabilities. This essentially means that Russia's war effort depends on Chinese imports. That reveals another thing though. Another very, very important thing. See, although Russia may need China, China doesn't exactly need Russia. The current dynamic serves Beijing much more than it does Moscow. How? Well, Russia's dependence on the Chinese market means that the Chinese can demand lower energy prices from their northern neighbor, which Russia has offered. So, cheaper Russian energy helps fuel the Chinese economy. And the portion of discounted oil that comes from Russia helps China export things like technology, clothes, trucks, cars, chemical products, and many other things. Now, these exports, where do they go? See, herein lies the difference between these two giants. Whereas Russia's economy and sanctions limit the extent of its international partnerships, China's economic dynamism allows it much more influence and flexibility on the world stage. What do I mean? Well, billions of dollars of Chinese exports go to Russia's great European rivals, the European Union, who has been at loggerheads with the Kremlin for over 4 years now. Its third largest trading partner is China. It doesn't end there. I didn't even talk about Ukraine yet. As for Ukraine itself, reports by The Economist and The Washington Post indicate that China sells to the Ukrainians technological components that are crucial to Kiev's war effort. Although China gives more support to Russia overall, the fact that it is still willing to sell certain types of technologies to Ukraine demonstrates a surprising degree of neutrality. So, what is the end goal? What does China gain by backing both sides? Well, first of all, obviously, Chinese firms make money by selling to both sides and being friends with everyone, and everyone's happy. But it goes beyond that though. Even though China's main rivalry may be with America and its European allies, that doesn't mean Russia doesn't pose any issues. For the country to have a strong Russia on its long northern borders could also be a bit of a problem, as it was during the Cold War. On the other hand though, if this massive northern neighbor was closely aligned to China's economy and political system, while its military isn't necessarily the biggest one on the planet, that could keep the northern borders more secure. This whole issue of security still matters even after the collapse of the Soviet Union. According to this article by The Washington Post, many people in Russia's intelligence services have a distrust of China. The article reports that every year, dozens of Russians have been charged for spying for the country's southern neighbor. What this means is that there is still some elements of distrust between the two. And from China's perspective, continuing this policy towards Russia may even give it some influence past those northern borders. And if it can please everyone and be friends with Europe at the same time, then ultimately that helps its interests. In essence, however, China may not necessarily need to pick between Russia or Europe, because as we've seen so far, it's done a pretty good job at being friends with both sides. What about Russia though? What does this mean for the Russian side? See, the nation needs friends. Even though Russia has good relations with many countries across the planet, China offers it many things that the rest of the planet doesn't, especially not at the same level. Ultimately, Russia is kind of stuck between a militarizing Europe in the west and an increasingly powerful China in the east. Not all relations are like this, however. Some countries have great relations with one another, like, for example, the United States and the United Kingdom. The two have a, quote, special relationship going back decades. So, unlike China and Russia, why is their relationship so historically special? I discussed that in this video. Go check it out. You might like it. Until then, thank you for watching.